In a previous video, I used Python's collections counter to count the number of times each letter occurred in a particular poem. And then I made sort of a cheap, fast histogram down in the terminal. And then in this video, I've decided that I'm going to try to make a nicer looking histogram of the sort of same data. So if this the poem that I read and this code that you're looking at are available at this URL seen here, and then the video that I'm going to use matplotlib, and the sort of video that sort of got me started is here. So I just wanted to give credit to the person who sort of got me started on working with matplotlib. First thing you have to do if you want to use matplotlib is to install it. So you would be, I'm in Visual Studio Code, and I have down here's my terminal. And the first time I use it, I had to install it. So I would do pip install matplotlib. So I've done that, so I can't now show you that, and it's just type that command and let it run for a little bit, not too long, but okay. Now here we go. So I say that now that I have that, I say that I'm bringing it into this particular program with an import. I'm going to use the collections counter. So that will do, I won't have to do the logic of counting the letters. That will be done for me by the collections counter. I want to sort of clean up the file I read and get it down to just letters. And so I'm going to use regular expressions with that. And then at some point I need just a set of letters, and it's just conveniently sitting there for me as a sort of a constant in string class. So I will import string. Okay, so I am opening up the file and reading it, putting it into lowercase, and substituting using the regular expression substitute to do everything. This in a square bracket is not, so anything that's not a letter A to Z, I'm replacing with nothing. So it's just all I'm going to have is letters when I'm done. And then here I am using the collections counter to do, it counts things, and the only thing in here is a big set of letters, so it counts the letters. And then I print that out, so we'll see that when I run. Then now I want to make the histograms out of it, the bar plots of my frequencies. So I want to take the counting that was done by counter and put it in a format that is ready to be used by this library. And it wants sort of a list of, so let me run it and then I'll show you what I have, and then it'll be easier to explain what I'm trying to do having done it. So I am making a column or a bar for A that represents how many times A occurred. So I don't know, that was A occurred, how many times did A occur? 25 times. Yes, that does look like 25. Okay, so I made this histogram, and I made two histograms, one where the bars are in a sort of alphabetical order, and then I made a second one in which they're in the order from most common to least common, and there were no J's or X's here, so that is skipped. And there's a way to, when you make these, to save them, but I wanted to save them in code. So I'm also going to do that to save them in code. Okay, so I want to make this column graph, and it's going to take, it wants the sort of, say here, there's E and there's 8. So E will be the label of the column, and 68 will be how tall it is. And it wants basically two lists. So that's not the form that counter gave me. So I sort of have to use what counter gave me and create the list. And then I also want to create them in two different orders, the alphabetical order and the most frequently occurring order. Okay, so here I'm starting with the alphabetical order. And so I'm going through my ASCII lowercase, which belongs to string. I'm looping over the letters, and I'm getting, I want two lists. I want a list of the labels and a list of the heights. I'm going to call them, they happen to be frequencies, but as far as the plot is concerned, they're heights. So I made two lists, a frequency list, a label list. And as I loop through the letters, I add the letter to the label list. And I'm getting the letter underscore frequency square bracket letter. That's coming out of what counter gave me. And I'm adding that, appending that to the frequency list. So now I have my two lists. And one way to make this is to sort of make the graph with the frequencies, which are the heights, and just sort of some numbers down on the sort of the x-axis, and then replace using xticks, replace those numbers with my labels, which were the lowercase ASCII. But instead, I can just combine those two steps and have my first argument in bar be the labels and my second one be the frequencies. So this is how I was doing it at first, sort of as a two-step process, frequencies with a sort of a fake label and then replacing the fake label with my real label. But then I realized I could just put the labels and the heights in automatically. So here's the main thing, but let me the sort of, as you're laying down some of these things, in some cases the order matters, in some cases it doesn't. But I got a little bit fancy, not necessarily a good style, but I just wanted to play. And so I wanted to sort of color the bars and color this background. And so coloring the background, I got the axes method, and then I could, within the axes, set the face color. And I'm using here some hex code, full amount of red, a lot of green, no blue, and that was that sort of orangey color. And this is the background, what you might call the chart area if you were in Excel or something. I put in that version, I gave myself a grid, or and the alpha is how sort of see-through the grid is. So I made it sort of half see-through. So the grid's there and you can see it, but it's not too prominent. I can make it even less prominent. I could not have it all together, or I can make it more prominent by not having the alpha, but with the alpha, I can sort of use this number to make it more or less prominent. Here's the actual bar plot. So PLT was just the name I gave when I imported. So I imported PyPlot and I called it PLT, just copying my original tutor here. Okay. So here was plot. I'm making a bar. It has available other types of plots. The words you're going to have across the bottom, the labels were the letters. These are the heights, which for me are the frequencies, the number of times the letter occur in the poem. And then I used a color option here I made the columns a dark red here, or a medium dark red. So that was this color. And you can just use text. You could just say red and orange and things like that. But I was also playing around with, could I use RGB values? And I could. I gave my plot a title. I gave it X and Y labels. In normally, I probably wouldn't give a histogram a Y label, because if you're making a histogram, it's sort of understood, then it's a frequency or a number of occurrences. But I also wanted to sort of demo what I could do with this library, so I put it in. Um, and here I am uh, saving the graph as a PNG, and then showing it. And this order seemed to matter for me. If I tried to show it and then save it, uh, that didn't work so well. So I don't know, maybe some kind of racing problem. I just have here the name of a file with .png, so it picked up the .png and understood to save it in a PNG format. And uh, my terminal and my Visual Studio Code are open to my 341 folder. And then this code happens to be in a subfolder, .up home. But the saving occurred uh, in the 341 folder. So it did not save it in the same subfolder as the Python, but it saved it in the folder that the terminal is open to and that I have open in Visual Studio Code. And so here it is, that file saved. Okay. Now, again, I could have, when I do a show, there's a save, but again, I wanted to save in code. So in case I were making a lot of them for whatever reason, I could save automatically in some kind of loop or what have you. Okay. And then it's just start all over again, but I'm changing the uh, order of my bars in this case. So now I wanted to put it from most common to least common. So there was a most common method for what the counter produced. And so I am most is it's going to reorganize those. It creates a list of tuples of the letter and then the frequency. And one thing to watch out for here is that there up above, I was just assuming that there were 26, but J and X don't occur, but it sort of handled it. But here I've got to just work with what I have. So I can't pretend I have something I don't have. So I can't say 26. I just have to say how many. Here I can say 26. And when I just don't have the last two, it'll just make 24 of the things. But later on, I cannot uh, automatically assume that I'm going to have uh, 26 labels or anything like that. But I'm just going to again make an array of heights, which are frequencies, and labels. I just call them frequency 2 and label 2, and looped over all the items in my most and appended. And again, these were what most common produced were tuples. And you can sort of see it here, A5, B2, R2, and this in their example. And that's what it looks like, this array of tuples. And so the second item in the tuple was the height, so I'm appending that to frequency, and the first was the letter, I'm appending that to the label. Then I'm making the bar plot. I'm not doing anything fancy with the background color here. I'm not doing anything fancy with the grid here. I just made it. I titled it. I gave myself X and Y labels as before. I saved it this time as a PDF, and I didn't have to do anything more. It was smart enough to pick up from the file extension what format to save it in. And then again, I did the save and then the show because I was having issues, and that was the second graph. So this is the first one showing, and now here's the second one showing. Didn't do anything fancy, so the white background and the blue columns, that was their default. And then again, that was saved not in the same folder as the Python code, but in the the folder pointing to by the terminal and what I have Visual Studio open to. And that was the PNG, not what I wanted. I want this time the PDF. And there we go. So that's what I wanted to show you. I had done this counting before and made a sort of a cheap terminal histogram. I wanted to make a nicer histogram. Did a little background search. This guy was my hero to get me started, and taught me how to use this library to make these nicer looking graphs. I played around a little bit more, how to save them, and so on. So that's what I wanted to show you. Thanks for your attention.